There's a little pond in here someplace, I don't know. But they can't go north because this is our property. And we have property this way. I don't know how far we go. I haven't been able to find a subdivision map. But that alleviates them going north. I'm trying to convince these folks to apply for the same grant that we're applying for and plant some shrubs down in here in this whole area, which can become rabbit habitat. Or
Why won't you give that land to the project so they can give people some?
Because it's got conservation easements all over that can't be touched.
For tax
No,
rates.
absolutely not. When this was deeded to us, the planning commission put caveats on this deed. You can't touch it. You can't touch the wetlands. There's a conservation easement on this property. This is the stone wall here, okay? We're not going to give the property up. We can't, because it's tied up in a conservation easement. It's as simple as all that. Period. That's the end of it. Now, I know how you feel. I'm going to tell you a little story. I live on the Boston Post Road, 500 feet off the road, okay? I lived in what I considered utopia until Mr. Adams built a mansion within 100 feet of my house. That big, huge house up there is in my backyard. I live with Stone's Ranch. You know what it's like to live out there and hear the bombs go off in the middle of the night and the machine guns? You got to put up with a little bit of noise in this world. And I feel for you, and I understand where you're coming from. Maybe you ought to convince them to drill you a new well. That might be something you ought to ask them to do, to get the well over here and put it down here.
So they should feel.
Well, I don't know how much you had.
You can't go within 75 feet of that.
Yeah, so.
If we can just, let's have conversation and then.
Yeah, but anyhow, I just want the folks to know that this is a conservation area. Hopefully, they may go in and do something along the same grant and create a habitat. One of the things that's happened here is this area was loaded with rabbits, and you speak about the moles, the deer. They've all moved off this property. Mr. Picasio has.
I got them all in my backyard.
You know, they're all, but what's going to happen here eventually? They're all going to come back because they're planting, and we're going to plant a grass seed mixture that's going to have alfalfa in it. It's going to have clover in it. It's going to be, it's going to enhance the habitat for the animals and the birds. We're going to put junipers in, which have berries that certain birds like. And this is all going to be money that's coming from the farm, from the federal government. Hopefully, they're shut down right now. They closed. We don't know if they're going to get money for next year. But this is the decision that the board of the land trust is going to make. So I can assure you that when it's all said and done here, when this project is finished, it's going to be a wonderful habitat for the animals. And that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else like to come up, make a comment or an observation or have a question with regard to what was presented by the construction team in terms of timing, in terms of?
If people are comfortable, we can repeat the question in the microphone if they want us to feel that way. If they don't want to come as long.
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, if you want to yell the question out, I'll repeat it here and then we'll go from, sir?
Yeah, trucks brought in from Damon Heights. My only question is, what kind of security are they going to have for in case of vandalism, or are they going to have a watch standing, or the group of guys that maintain the equipment? What kind of?
Okay, so the question from the audience was, is there security going to be provided in addition to the fencing that will be around, I guess is your question? Thank you.
During the day, our security is Travis. He's there full-time. Off hours, what we're actually doing now is exploring the opportunity to install what we call a mobile security system. We've used them on a lot of our other locations that might be subject to any vandalism or theft, and that would be monitored whenever we're not on site. You wouldn't see anything. It wouldn't be ugly. In fact, we don't want people to see it, but it sees what we're not seeing when we're not there.
Is that during construction?
During the construction, that's
And
correct.
after construction, once it's built? then
After construction,
what happens?
typically, Green Skies hasn't had too many issues with their projects, and they usually handle,
See how that plays out.
Yeah.
We may keep those.
they handle it on a case-by-case basis. A lot of times when the projects are installed up on a rooftop, no one can get to it, but, you know,
Yeah, I don't think none of these are ever going in someone's backyard, though.
I know that you spoke about fencing along in here. Is there fencing all the way around?
yeah, right now, the project does have fencing all the way around, but right
That
next
is
to the
what kind-
neighbors, it switches from chain link to stockade fence.
So back here, when there's no visual neighbors, the chain link most likely
That's
will be
correct.
here.
Yep.
And then here, the stockade is gonna be an attempt to try to make it as visually pleasing as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
So there is fence all the way around so that people can't.
Yep, with a gate in the end.
Okay. So that,
It'll be monitored, somehow 24 hours a day
Well,
when it's under.
Yep, as Andrew mentioned earlier, they'd actually have a very sophisticated monitoring system to basically keep track of all the vital statistics of their plant. Whenever anything goes down or anything happens, they get notified immediately. And they have an on-staff crew that can go out at a moment's notice to any of their projects to service it or do whatever they need to do to bring things back online.
is there any closed circuit or anything, once you guys are gone and the solar panel just operates, is there any kind of closed circuit monitoring system or anything that's gonna sweep or?
That isn't part of their plan right now, but it's something that I know that they always take into consideration on a project-by-project basis.
With vandalism the way it is today, I think that'd be a good idea.
Yep, certainly something I'm sure that, Green Skies will consider.
Are you gonna light the fields at night?
No, there's no proposed.
What was the question, if you just, we gotta remember.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, the
yeah.
question was whether or not the field would be lit in the evening, and no, it will not be.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mingo?
That chain link fence, is my understanding, it's gonna be able for animals to get under it, like rabbits, or is it going right down?
That's correct. Animals can get underneath it.
Not deer, though.
Deer
I-
can jump it. They can jump a 10-foot fence.
All right, so that raises questions about security for people getting in and under, if rabbits can. How about further questions? Bev?
How many acres have been cleared?
question is how
The
many
question is, yeah,
acres?
how many acres have been cleared? Yeah, it's close to 38.
38?
38, yes, close to it.
The original, form we had was 33 plus or minus acres.
Yeah, we're probably within the exact, it's certainly in conjunction with what the approvals were for the plan that we have up here.
What type of trees and bushes are you planning to put in?
Yep, right now, there's actually a
The
plan.
question was what type of trees and,
What type?
I'm sorry,
Want me to
question is
repeat
what
the
type
question?
of trees and plantings that will be installed. And right now, we have a plan around the site, it varies, but it's a number of deciduous and non-deciduous trees. Evergreens and trees with leaves and some shrubs.
How tall will they be getting?
Their mature stage, what we could do is actually walk through, Ryan, you want to pull the landscape plan up, and we'll actually go through a cross-section of the individual plantings that have been proposed. So we'll give you an idea of the variety of what was proposed, and then it'll also tell us what the maturity level is on that.
How tall will these panels be once they're?
The question that, and we'll get to that right after we do the landscaping, but how tall will the panels be after everything is installed? We can show you a detail of what that looks like, too. Yeah, right now we're going to stick with the landscaping question. So it's right here. So,
Yep, combination for trees, you'll have flowering dogwood, serviceberry, hillspire juniper, white spruce, and eastern white pine. And for your shrubs, you'll have common witch hazel and mountain laurel.
and what we could do is, yeah, I'm not a landscape architect, I'm actually a civil engineer myself. Usually all we do is move dirt around. The size that we're installing, the plans are specifying them as 7 to 8 feet. You know, on the average, it's going to be around 7 feet tall. And we could get the information on the maturity level of those and actually circulate them through Mr. Formica's office, if that's something that you all would desire.
Yeah, 'cause like an arborvitae, you go up to 30 feet tall.
Yeah, you know what, I'm not an expert with all the trees.
Right.
Usually in my yard, I'm taking them down or dealing with them after they come down.
What's
You
that
probably
juniper
share the same
for?
thing.
What's the juniper you're planting? Is that a spreading juniper or not?
It's a juniper, it's a Hillshire juniper, and I am not sure about the, again, we can get some information on all these plants, I think, and send them out to everybody so they all know.
It's an ornamental white juniper.
Is it the spreading kind which the rabbits love?
Microphone.
Oh, yeah, is the question, is the juniper a spreading kind, like the rabbits love?
Is there a rabbit?
Juniper, I believe, always grows in a spreading, habit if left unobstructed. So they will be spaced properly, and will spread out and will provide cover as they mature.
There is a native juniper,
Hmm.
if you can find it.
It's
Question in
actually-
the back?
Yes, Richard Lumber, 83 Walnut Hill Road. Our well is very close to our stone wall. We're the flag-looking parcel, right, that it butts?
In the green.
In the green.
In the green, so I'm going to start here.
No,
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 keep
you're
going
right.
to the right.
Yeah.
Keep going, keep going, keep
That's
going,
that
right there.
one. That
What?
one.
That's
And I'm
us.
Right
the
here.
one next to it.
That's us.
And our well is back.
Richard and Bobby McGurr, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Our well sits maybe 15 feet from our stone wall.
Right.
I have seen dump trucks drive back there. That's well within 75 feet. I don't know what it's doing to my well. I have no idea if it's doing anything to my well. My taste buds aren't what they used to be. But that's a concern to me, because
Yeah.
would you guys mind testing well water or doing something like that during the project to ensure that, my well doesn't get contaminated?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
like an ongoing thing.
Yeah, I mean, typically, again, the question was concern about a well being adjacent to the construction, whether or not there's really any issues with that. We do construction all the time near properties that have wells, and I can certainly understand and respect your questions. We're happy to test that for you. There really shouldn't be anything happening to the wells. We're certainly not spraying anything on the ground or putting anything into the ground which would affect groundwater, the natural flow of the groundwater. So we're happy to test that for you. I think it's going to be prone to sediment. We talked about the vibratory roller that we're using out there, and unfortunately, we don't have any other way to compact the soil in the trenches that we're installing. So we have to use that, and we are happy to work with everybody to make sure that we do our best to be a good neighbor during construction. And if testing the well is one of those things, we're happy to do that.
Okay. Also, what's the decibel level on the inverters?
It's a good question, and I know Andrew has prepared a sheet that he looked up. The question was, what's the decibel level on the inverters? And you know what, Andrew, I'm already talking, if you don't mind me just going through it. Yeah,
From 3 feet, 9 feet, and 30 feet.
yeah, so it's from 3 feet to the inverter, it's 66. 9 feet, approximately 3 meters, it's 58. And it's 49 at 10. So when you equate that, to me, that really didn't make any sense. It doesn't tell me anything. What you can equate that to is normal conversation at 3 feet is 60 to 65 decibels. These are not loud. This is not loud equipment. It's not, there's no moving parts. It's not generating anything in terms of clanking or gears moving. It's really pretty innocuous.
Sometimes that humming sound like the fluorescent light gives off that bugs me ears the most. Not
Right.
someone talking that bugs me, it's the garden,
Yeah.
that
yeah.
constant humming.
It's inaudible after what?
I think it was 30 meters.
Yeah, I would suggest that at any point with the neighboring properties, you're not going to hear it. What's more is around.
Why do they gotta be on the outside of the property? Why can't they be in the center then?
Yep, and I'm gonna.
I can
Ryan.
answer that.
The question was, why do the inverters have to be on the
Right on our
outside of the
property
property and not on the inside?
A number of reasons. First and foremost being the way the project is engineered and the way that electricity is distributed. The longer the wire, the more voltage drop you get and the less efficient your electric generation is. Second to that, they are the I'll say the most intensive electrical or mechanical parts of the project that need to be readily accessible for both O&M personnel and first responders. So if we were to have a inverter somewhere in the array here, 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 or here, it would be quite difficult to service that in the event of emergency during the maintenance of the system, and quite difficult for emergency personnel to get in there with trucks if they need to.
Yeah, why couldn't you just put a service road right through the center and have all four of them right in the center of the whole project, and then service road going right to all four of them?
Again, that brings us back to the engineering, the electrical engineering for the project, and the ability to transmit the electricity effectively through distance.
So could you show where the 8 inverters are going to be located?
Okay, the question was where the 8 inverters are going to be located. You'll see 4. It's actually 8 inverters in 4 separate locations. So there are 2 inverters here on 1 concrete pad, 2 inverters here on 1 concrete pad, here and here.
In the back?
Gail Monkey, I live at 85. I live in that corner one.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's like, I have 2 inverters. I'm so lucky.
Yes.
Question is she has 2 inverters.
Yes.
It's really just 2 pieces of equipment in the exact same location. You'll.
One on the side, so 4.
No, I'm sorry, Michael, she has here.
Oh,
and here.
two of the locations are very
Yes.
close to the corner of her property,
Of
right?
both of them, and that's where my house is.
Yes, I think I want to talk a
Is
little
that the
bit.
graveyard site?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right in the corner there. Yep.
You wanted to talk about, I think we should discuss kind of, there's a significant amount of woods in the back.
There is a significant amount of woods that shelters your property from these 2 inverters. But I think it's important to note that the decibel level decreases exponentially as you go away from the inverter. So through the studies that have been performed on these inverters, as Andrew said, within 30 meters, it's a light conversation. Maybe something about right now is what you would hear of 2 people talking maybe a couple hundred feet away from your house. As you move further away, that decibel level decreases exponentially. So once you get to 100 feet or so, it's basically inaudible.
Does Green Skies have a project we could go to that's in Connecticut and we could just like see,
Not
you know,
Jersey.
that we could drive by?
Question, yep. Question is, does Green Skies have a project that's in Connecticut that you could drive by? There isn't a lot of these in Connecticut right now, but, you know.
One or-
You know what? That's a great idea. We are in the, Center Point Construction Company is in the process of renovating the service plazas on the highway system, state highway system. So the closest to here would be, that's installed with a ground mount.
Montville?
Is
Or Plainfield Service
Montville and
Plaza.
Plainfield have ground-mounted solar arrays that it's public property. And most of those are installed in the areas that are accessible for, you know, dog walking areas and whatnot. You could get an idea for what that type of thing looks like by going out there.
I have two.
And they got inverters there.
Yes,
Ground mounted.
they do. There's always an inverter.
I have two questions or comments. Are there the inverters? Are there fencing in between the inverters and any of the neighbors?
Yes, each inverter will have fence around it, and
Is there, like, the pad, is it enclosed?
it is.
So could that be made soundproof on the side, that it radiates sound toward the house? Maybe a little more solid and maybe more open on the other 3, and then it goes to the stockade fence? Is that, so there'll be some, in other words, we're talking, but there'll be maybe a,
Encase the whole thing.
You know, I would suggest that actually the fence in itself there's already that barrier proposed, so that you're really not going to be subject to it.
all right. And secondly, before,
Over here,
Which one? This?
that one,
Yeah.
and there ain't nothing there. You guys took down every tree right up to the stone wall, there ain't nothing.
Right,
And
but
if you put a stockade
you-
fence there, I'm still gonna hear that,
Right,
I
no-
don't care if I'm 300 feet away from that thing.
you know there's a at your house there's a significant amount of new trees and shrubs proposed right there.
10.
He's right.
right here,
I'm
right.
down from Andrew's house.
right here.
This one. Okay. Here?
No, I'm
Go lower on the screen.
lower on the screen from that one down, yeah. 10, Mountain View.
Mountain. No, Mountain View.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mountain View Road is right here, just for those.
And then, you know, I don't know a lot about solar farms, but we do have a significant amount of panels on top of the high school. I don't know if there's an inverter there, if there are inverters on all solar fields.
Every
So you have to have one of those to
yes.
have, so why don't I find out where that inverter is located on the high school's roof? Do you know, Joe?
Yes, it's right behind the school, near the maintenance, entrance. If you were to go behind the auditorium,
Maybe you want to,
if you come in to this, high school and take a right and you go behind the auditorium, the inverter is up against,
that new area where we just paved?
yes, where the dumpsters,
Yeah.
I think still are. And you'd see a caged in area, it's like a beige structure about the size of a van, and, the inverter's right there.
So if somebody could go to that inverter now, that's the area where you turn right behind where they have the first parking lot where the faculty parks and the auditorium back door is, and you go around behind there. You could probably get up within a couple of feet of the inverter, right?
You could probably touch it, and, you know, at night, obviously, it's not gonna make any noise at all.
Yeah.
During the day.
So maybe you could go there and kind of get a sense for the kind of noise that it makes. Whether it's the same, I imagine it's the same, don't you, Joe?
It's gonna be similar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's have some people,
Mr.
Joe,
Mingo's
that
had
have-
his.
Technical question for you.
Sure,
What's the difference
sorry.
between an inverter and a transformer?
Okay.
Restate the question though, so everybody at home can hear.
Mr. Mingo asked, what's the difference between an inverter and a transformer? The way solar electricity is harvested, it gets transmitted within the solar array by DC current versus AC current. An inverter is essentially a reverse transformer that changes that DC current to AC current, which we all use.
It's the opposite of a rectifier.
Correct.
Now, on my property, right next to my house, I have a transformer that takes 40,000 volts or 20,000 volts and drops it down to 440 volts, which is split to 220. This thing hums, I've never heard it. And I'm gonna assume that an inverter is no different than a transformer. It just works in the opposite direction. So, any transformer on a telephone pole hums.
The mechanism in each device is different. For topical conversation, it can be said that an inverter is a reverse transformer, but the mechanism at which it transforms that power or changes that power is different than what we see along the roads and highways.
All right. Tom, did you have another?
Yes.
Yeah, I can just change
The
it.
one gentleman in the blue too is.
Go ahead.
No,
Yeah, go
no, there was some talk of, Matt Munch, 101 Walnut Hill. There was some talk, and I think at the last meeting, Mr. Formica, you were saying that potentially you would try to coordinate a walk of the land for all the neighbors. Is that still on the table? I think that would be kind of nice to, once it's graded and all, see where all the water basins are and to see where, the entrances and exits and the inverters are gonna be.
Yeah, I'll speak for Center Plan Construction.
Restate the question.
Oh, the question was, will the neighbors, the abutters, be able to get on the site and actually see for themselves what is going on during the construction process, or?
At some point in time, that's reasonable that we can actually see.
Yeah, what's happening, sure. Yep.
Yeah, it's, okay, I'll answer that one. We don't have a problem with that. We just, there's safety concerns. You know, what we'll do is we'll look into a way to get people out to be able to understand what's going on in a safe manner, and then through Mr. Formica's office, get it back, and we'll come up with it. What's that?
There's no one there on Sundays.
Well,
Yes. Yes.
we would prefer that did not happen.
The short answer is, we're open to allowing everyone to see what's going on. We just have to figure out the mechanism to do that, especially if it's
Yes.
gonna be a larger group.
We are very open here at Center Plan Construction. Again, Travis Burton is on site 8 to 10 hours a day. Every day we are working. He can intercept.
That's what he tells us, Ryan.
I think it's 12.
Yeah, I know, I can attest to
Yeah.
about 12 hours.
Yep.
Well, we should talk about the length of time that work's going on too.
Certainly.
So, you know, let's go through all the questions and then we can go back to that.
Well, you
one.
have Tom and then Ms. Runke and the people in the back.
Just to change the subject, I would ask you to please not put any holes in the bottom of the fence so that animals can get through. Spent 30 years in children's hospitals. I've seen kids drown in diaper pails, pool covers, drainage. Kids are gonna wander off and they're gonna see those holes and try and go through them. and it could cause significant trouble. The other thing is no rabbit with a brain is ever gonna go out on that field, because a turkey buzzard's gonna get it. So none of the animals wanna go across that field. So I would have the bottoms closed off so that children cannot get in trouble in the fields. It will not affect the rabbits or anything else. They look for other type of cover which is around that area, and they'll find it. They'll never go out on that field.
The comment was about securing the fence so that be
No-
children
no
safe
openings
and without
on the
openings
fence.
or availability to crawl under. Somebody in the back, I don't know who.
I just had a personal question from my
Sure.
lot that's in the corner.
And you were
Oh, yeah,
here.
right there,
Yep.
yeah. On the left, are there, and I know you're clearing going down towards Walnut Hill, is there any wires that are gonna be there, or?
You will have, sorry to interrupt,
No,
anything
that's
else?
right.
Okay, the question was, were there any wires going to be coming through the Tinker property, up past the, I'm sorry, is it Ranke? Runke property. May be hard to make out from where you folks are sitting here, but this small line here is the extent of overhead wire that on the entire project. 1, 2, 3, those little squares, if you can see them right there, are the point of interconnection with the grid. And from that point, it is completely underground electrical installations.
Is there another question? Yes, in the back.
65 Walnut Hill, I'm not on the map.
Okay.
But the original proposal shows for the driveway next to us to be a maintenance road. So it would be further to the, what is that? That
Okay.
direction over there. What's the current status of that driveway?
In subsequent,
Question is,
oh, I'm sorry. The question is the status of a maintenance driveway along, was it 65 Walnut Hill? I'm sorry?
Yes.
65 Walnut Hill.
yeah.
There is no road anymore. I believe, I'm sorry, Michael, is your property somewhere around where Michael's gorgeous tie is?
I think so. Yes, I don't think it's on the map. I think it's down that way.
Okay, you may have seen a version of a drawing that was in the very early stages of development, where there was a proposed interconnection point at this end of the array. It is no longer there. It is through an easement through the Tinker property, and it will be here. And there will be a small gravel access road for emergency personnel and utility maintenance personnel only. So any other roads over in this area will not be built.
Thank you. Can we follow up then and give us a little bit on how emergency management will deal with that? So emergencies, if there were emergencies way over on this other end of it, they'd still go through the Tinker property.
Right, you know, I think we won't have control over that. The question deals with how will emergencies on the property be dealt with, and I don't know that it's appropriate for us to answer that.
No,
one.
but,
I'm sorry, can I interrupt?
Dick
And
Morris.
Would Dick Morris from Flanders Department be willing to
If
speak
you
about
come
that?
up, Dick, while why don't you stand at the podium and use the red light there, the laser. You can point to where we're going. That way it gets you behind the microphone.
One of the issues early on that we started talking to Ryan about was how are we going to be prepared for access, training, firefighting activities that may arise there, or even somebody up there having a medical issue. So Ryan met with myself and Deputy Fire Chief Kyle Foley of Flanders Fire Department, which services the north end of town primarily. And we worked out a fire plan that we have not implemented yet because there's nothing built there. However, we're going to continue to come in this way. We're going to have a cistern in this way. Area